Good afternoon, and welcome to Coffee Time with Kauffman, the comfortable place to talk about women's leadership. Today, I am interviewing Katia Avila Pinedo as we discuss a superheroine's STEM story of achievement against all odds. Hey, Katia.
Hello.
Katia is a Mexican Latina from Pomona, California. She grew to love learning through her experiences as a student. She also saw the academic disparities that her community faced, which became a strong motivator for change in her life. She has an incredible story that every woman in STEM can enjoy hearing about. Her story includes how one high school teacher took the initiative to provide an opportunity for a STEM project to Katia and others. That support introduced Katia and her team to engineering and inventing. Now, as a computer engineer with a passion for education, Katia aims to encourage other students to invent. She also wants to support them with opportunities similar to the ones that influenced her so much. But before we get into a superheroine STEM story of achievement against all odds with Katia, my name is Maria Kauffman, and I'm a life coach. And today I am drinking some raspberry tea. What are you drinking, Katia?
I just have some cold water with some fresh berries in it. It's been my go-to this summer.
Oh, nice and refreshing, right? Well, Katia, tell me some of your earliest memories of elementary school, maybe, and some of the influences or the environment that you might have been growing up in.
Yeah, so I grew up in Pomona, California, and my earliest memories, I think, would be in school, in preschool. I went to preschool in a bilingual classroom, and I remember one of the first kind of memories of working with my peers was me actually leading a group of students during vocabulary sessions. And I do recall actually asking the teacher if I could lead, and she was very surprised. But I think that was when I really found out that I liked helping others learn, just like how I like learning. And then growing up during elementary school, I've always liked to learn a lot from my teachers as well, how they teach, how they interact with students. I've always been really aware ever since a young age, although I didn't really know I wanted to be an educator back then.
Ah, cool. So that's interesting. So when you say bilingual, so the teacher was teaching bilingual?
Yes, the class was both in English and Spanish, and there'll be like an English, session and a Spanish session because a lot of our community members and our students were from Spanish-speaking families.
Oh, I'm so jealous, actually. That's a very rich education.
Yes. Unfortunately, that probably ended a few years after I moved on from preschool, but it was a very good thing for the students that participated in as well.
When you taught the class, were you also doing bilingual teaching, or?
I don't recall, but I mean, I'm sure it was some sort of Spanglish there.
Awesome. So those are some of your early memories. What you talked about vocabulary, any math thing, differentiators going on that you noticed, or was math just a thing?
It kind of was just a thing I liked doing. I think it kind of just seemed like a puzzle to me, so I was like, oh, math time. All right. It's fun. Yeah.
Cool. So tell us about then what high school was like for you. And I know you have a pretty amazing story. So get us started.
Yeah. So throughout my whole time in school, I wanted to be a veterinarian. I loved animals. I thought I wanted to really help them. And then around 10th grade, I kind of just didn't want to do that anymore. I just felt like I liked doing it. I thought that would be a good idea, but it wasn't my passion. And it was my AP chemistry teacher, Mr. Gamboa. I found out that he was forming a team, an invent team, and we're going to apply to try to get a grant from the Lemelson MIT Foundation to build an invention of our choice to solve a real world problem. I joined the team because I saw the word invent. And I remember throughout my whole childhood, I just like building things, building toys or taking things apart. I always wondered how things worked. And I just thought this would be, a good place for me to explore that, to be with other people that also like doing that. Little did I know that would turn into this whole new career path for me. During that project, we were accepted to the Lemelson MIT competition as an invent team. And we built a prototype of our device called the Heart and Soul, which is an at-home medical foot monitoring system to help monitor the health of a diabetic patient's foot. And during that, my task on the team was to build an oxygen sensor. But no one in the team, the students, nor the teachers, nor the school had any engineering background. We had no STEM club. We had no robotics teams. So after we got accepted, after we did the whole application process, it kind of became like, wow, we don't have any of the resources to actually build this, which felt very discouraging to the team. But that kind of started this whole process of really persevering and being inventors despite all these barriers that we faced. And eventually, in the summer of 2018, we were able to showcase the prototype of our invention at the Eureka Fest in MIT's campus.
That is incredible. So take us back early. So you talked about a chemistry teacher.
Yes.
So the chemistry teacher got you into the project that sounded like it kind of could use some engineering support. Like that sounds pretty interesting. So how did the opportunity even really present itself? Do you remember?
Yeah. So from what I know, it was this Mr. Gamboa, my chemistry teacher. He is a researcher. He's actually an immigrant from Mexico as well as I am. And he tells the story of going to college in the United States, barely speaking English, and actually failing his chemistry classes. But he eventually learned to love the science and became a researcher and has been teaching at this school, at our high school, for a long time. And what he was trying to do lately was trying to bring more of these STEM opportunities to his students. So he ended up going to the Invent Team kind of conference, but for teachers, for educators to kind of know more about Invent Teams. He came back and got an email, like, hey, are you ready to apply for your Invent Team? And I remember him saying that at first he ignored the email, he deleted it, he got another email, and somehow one of the students saw that he got that email and was like, what is that? An Invent Team, Mr. Gamboa. And he was like, oh, it's just this team where you could probably get some funding to invent a project, but it's a lot of work. I don't know how we're going to do it. And she's like, I want to do it. What do you mean? Why not? So that student wanted to invent, they wanted to be part of this project. And they were the reason Mr. Gamboa was like, okay, you know what? If one student wants to do it, I'm here. I got to support them. And it was that student, our team leader, Evelyn, that was able to get all the team members together. And that's how our story kind of began from there.
Cool. What else can you tell us about the forming of those people then? Was it a little bit of resistance? Was everybody on board? Did you have to convince certain people to be a part of it? What did that look like?
Yeah. So first of all, it's like, what kind of students do you want on your team? And that's a question that we asked her once we were in the team. Like, who were you looking for? Well, we knew that no one in the school had engineering experience, so we couldn't be like, let's see what you can do. Let's see how much tech you can code. I think she was just looking for people that wanted to do something, wanted to participate in a project, wanted to learn more about inventing or just building things, And I think also it helped that it was to solve a real world problem. So it kind of all got us to think, what is it that we see in our community that needs help? And I think we all had some ideas going in. So all these students, I think it was a split between current 11th graders and 10th graders. I was a 10th grader at the time. And, we came from a bunch of different countries, including Mexico. I think 6 different countries were represented, all of us from immigrant families or immigrants ourselves. And like I said, we had no engineering experience, but just a passion to build something and to help others.
Yeah. When you talked about you were just looking for some people that wanted to do something, it sent chills down my spine, because I think that's pretty powerful in how some of these things form. In the beginning, you have no idea what you're getting into.
We had no idea, no.
Which was the case. So you put together a team. What did the project how did it start?
Yeah. So before even to make your application to receive the grant, you had to come up with the idea for your invention. And that's when we had to brainstorm, what is it that we wanted to do? And Mr. Gamboa was the one to point, well, look at your community. What is it that your community needs? What does your family need? And at that point, another one of our team leaders, her father had diabetes, and her grandfather, and he was elderly. and he had neuropathy in his feet, meaning he lost sensation of his feet and would often get lesions and wounds and wouldn't know when they would get really badly infected. And oftentimes that leads to amputation to many diabetic patients. So then we're like, wait, I think a lot of us can relate to a story of one of our family members having diabetes. And that's when we found out that Pomona has a pretty high diabetes rate in its population. So we're like, hey, what if we make something that could help not only our diabetic patients, but these elderly patients that we already know come from a low income community that probably don't have caregivers there with them, and can't have access to providers all the time. Maybe we can help them, not have such a high chance of amputation just because they have a small cut on their foot.
Sure. Were there other ideas that you were considering during that phase?
Yeah, so we knew we wanted to address this issue, but we didn't know how. Our very first idea was to do a toenail trimmer. We're like, yeah, we could just help them trim their toenails, keep their feet all nice. And then when we presented the idea to our teacher, he's like, wait, you want to put dangerous things next to a diabetic patient? No, I don't think you're ready for that. So it went back to the brainstorm and be like, okay, we have really big ideas, but we're obviously have very limited skills and resources. Let's see what else we can do, which is why we moved to a more monitoring device with sensors. And it has an oxygen sensor and a blood flow sensor to kind of keep track of circulation and just oxygen flow into the foot.
Yeah, I mean, it actually sounds pretty revolutionary. That's it's a big project for high schoolers. Did you did you have a sense for how big it was? Or were you just like, oh, it sounds like a good idea. Let's just take one step at a time?
It was definitely just like, okay, that sounds like a project. Let's do it. And even hopping into it, we're like, oh man, how do we build sensors? What even is like an oxygen sensor? How does it work? How does this like light emission work? So it was like, we didn't know. We kind of dove into this rabbit hole of engineering. But that's a rabbit hole I learned to love.
Yeah. So in the meantime, obviously you're going to school. How often did you guys meet, and what was it like, being a team and working toward a goal?
Yeah. So we were all in high school and we were all either honors or AP students. So, we had classes to work on. We also were very involved outside of school. Some of us were in clubs. I was in part of the orchestra. I was a violinist. So, after school, I would have to go and rehearse. So I couldn't stay after school. So we would actually meet at 7:30 a.m., 8 a.m. in Mr. Gamboa's classroom. And we would do all the work we can in the morning before class started. We would meet whenever we had lunch and there to finish. And then if we had time after school, we would do that. I know that in the summer, before we presented our prototype at MIT, a lot of us spent the whole kind of summer there working on the project, but then we also had summer classes at the same time. So it was, go to your summer class, try to finish this whole day's worth of work in a few hours so that by lunchtime, you have the rest of the day to go finish your project. Wow. It was very helpful that our teachers were supported. All the other teachers knew that we were working on this project. They may not understood what it was, but they knew we weren't like messing around. That they knew that it was something we were excited to do and go work on it. And we were very passionate about it. So definitely helped to have their support.
So eventually you presented at MIT, but were there other milestones that you remember that might have been significant, or anything that would happen during those mini milestones to get you to the point where you were confident and comfortable to present?
Yeah, so we actually applied and received an application notice around maybe September, October. And then during that whole winter, it was actually like trying to learn engineering basics for ourselves. And during that time, it felt like we were falling behind because all the other teams were already building. They already had that robotics engineering experience. So, it felt, like I said, kind of discouraging, like we are falling behind. Maybe we're not cut out for this. But we just had to keep pushing, kind of keep learning how to keep building. We also kind of midway through had a community showcase we had to do, right? And it was like a very, very rough prototype, but just an idea of what we were doing, showing it to our community. And the day before, I was working on the sensor and I lost the photodiode to the oxygen sensor. And that's what takes the light readings and tells us how much light was actually passed through. I lost the tiniest little component and it was the last one I had. And, my teacher was like, how can you lose it? I was crying. I was like, how can I lose it? It's not going to work. We have a presentation. And then I went home crying to my parents. I remember we drove about 2-3 hours to like the city of industry to find this component store, and I bought like 20 of the photodiodes. Just to make
You're not gonna be without a diode again. Yeah.
Yes. I know that was another kind of stressful point, just trying to get that general concept out there. And then when
that's how it happens, though. I mean, it's interesting that you talk about this, but that happens in the real world too. It'll be like deadline time, and you will be missing a crucial component, maybe the tiniest of components, but it happens.
Right. And then the more stressed you are, like the easier it is to kind of like lose things or just misplace some wires. I think that also happened right before we were gonna present at MIT. I was building my sensor after we went through airport, and it wasn't working anymore. And I was like, oh my God, why is it not working? I followed everything. Turns out I just put some wires in wrong. But yeah, there was a couple times where we really got scared, felt like we weren't going to make it.
Well, at those times, I guess it really, what I love about those opportunities is it forces, it's an opportunity to understand how much you've learned. Right. So, I mean, even if you have 2 wires backwards, for you to be able to troubleshoot that and then to come out successfully, that's a really awesome opportunity.
Yeah, it was a big relief.
Yeah. So what else can you tell us about the project and some of those milestones getting you through to a point of success?
Yeah, I think another just part of being an event team is our team was very different than the others. We came from a low-income school district. Like I said, we had no robotics or STEM clubs in our schools. A lot of the event teams were the robotics teams. We had one of the smallest teams that year. I think we had 7 or 8 members, and about 85% were women, whereas the other teams were very, very little women in their team.
Oh,
besides so that,
you would notice that whenever you would show up for, was it competitions or presentations or what?
It was the prototype presentation. Yes.
Okay. Oh, interesting. So now it's go time, and you're seeing what other people are doing. They're obviously not doing the same thing. They have different ideas.
Right.
Correct?
Yes.
But you're judged on some merits. Is it judging, or what, is it a competition, or?
So the competition itself was to get the grant. After kind of getting that grant, it was just showing what you did, with your prototype.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay. So
yeah, at Eureka Fest, which is what it was called, we met all these other 14 event teams from across the country. And we saw their projects, and we saw that they were very cool. But, when they would go on stage, it would be like teams of 20, 18 kids, a lot of them Caucasian, a lot of them males, when we were a lot of students of color and women, so it was a very big contrast in that sense. And it's, I think at first the teachers definitely noticed that we were like, oh, wow. And I think they actually had a talk like, don't get scared. You belong here. You did just as much work as all these other students, if not more, because you had a lot of different barriers to overcome.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. And doing that, we also needed some funding to fly our whole team to MIT. That was not cheap, flying from California to Massachusetts. So we relied on our community to do that. And we were able to host a banquet dinner with the help of our school's band and of local catering. And we sold tables to the district members and to the community. And we were able to fundraise enough to fund all of our flights to MIT.
Wow, that must have been pretty exciting.
It was. And it was like, wow, the community is really there for us, and they want to see us succeed.
So without that effort, then what? The whole project was in jeopardy. Is that
without
true?
Without that effort, we just worked 9 months, and we're not going to show our work to the rest of everyone.
And if you don't show it, then you don't get the grant. Is this true?
No. So we got the grant beforehand. We were able to build our project with the grant. It was just that we worked so hard to show the whole teams what we did, to meet the other teams, to meet the people who gave us the grant.
Right. Okay. That's like the trophy, right? That's the recognition. Right. Oh, cool. And the community came together. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Now, along the way, though, it does sound like you were taking opportunities to involve the community with presentations as well.
Yeah, we did a community presentation, and since we got accepted and we got the grant for the invention, we had the local newspaper called La Nueva Voz share our story. You know, as a group of students from our school got a lot of funding to build a prototype, and then the next like article about us was like, hey, we're having a community showcase, come see it. And then it's like, hey, we need to get these kids to MIT, come to the banquet.
Yeah.
And then it was like we got the kids to MIT, look at them, like how happy they are. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's quite an adventure too. So you all get to take this adventure to MIT. Can you tell us anything about what that was like?
It was humid. I have never been to the East Coast, especially in the summer. It was humid.
I was just telling Katia before we hit live that I'm in Pennsylvania, so right now it's a nice transition out of that humid weather. So you know what I'm talking about. That's funny.
Yeah. But overall, I mean, just seeing the campus was pretty amazing. You know, we were close to getting to our senior year, so we were, you know, really excited to just be on this really amazing engineering campus, meet, you know, where a lot of our great engineers and inventors came from. And then just seeing the city, I think, was an experience that a lot of us haven't had before, you know, kind of going out of town to explore. Yeah. It was new and it was scary.
Yeah. Well, and you had been working together as a team, so that must have been quite rewarding to share that experience as well.
Yeah, I mean, the whole process was definitely a bonding experience for all of us. And even now, you know, just meeting with the team again after 5 years of this invention, it's still really nice. You know, we share a special bond through it.
Oh, that is really cool to hear. So you all still get together, you keep in touch.
Yeah, we actually got together last weekend to celebrate our patent acceptance.
Oh my gosh, that is huge.
Yes. So after presenting at Eureka Fest in the summer, we reached out to Microsoft's Make What's Next patent program to get legal support for the patent application. And as of June of this summer, we received our patent application notice.
Wow. Yeah. That is life-changing.
That is, yeah. So we had a celebration this weekend where we had the director of the USPTO come, as well as Mr. Robert Lemelson from the Lemelson Foundation, who was the one who provided the funding. And a lot of different people. We had recognition from the senators and assembly members for our work. So it was a very big community event. And, you know, it's just to say like, wow, we have gone this far and we made it, you know?
Holy cow, you are absolutely a superheroine.
Oh, no.
Yes, you are. Well, it sounds so life-changing, and it's a fascinating invention, to be honest. You know, and, you know, obviously from high school, you are thinking out of the box, you're putting the work in, and you're inventing something new and different for the world. That has a very positive impact, so good for you.
Yeah, hopefully it does.
How has it changed your life, and what happened to maybe you and some of the other team members since then?
Yeah, I mean, since then, we have all attended college. I believe most of us are first generation college students and have all either gone into the business administration, health industry, or engineering fields.
Wow. Do you think it was as a result of that project, partly?
Definitely, yes. I mean, that taught us, you know, what our strengths were in terms of public speaking or administrating the team or, you know, engineering. We all learned what it was that we loved about that project and about ourselves.
Oh, that is so awesome. I just love this story. So how do you think college went for you, partly because of having this foundation from that project?
Yeah, I mean, I've learned that industry engineering and like going to college and learning about engineering is very different, right? It was just, yes. It was a very different experience. It definitely felt like even though I had that background in that project, I was still learning a lot of new of that foundation because I was self-taught, you know, because no one had really taught us engineering. It was just through YouTube videos and through these resources. So it was like, oh, wow, that's what that meant. Oh, wow, that's what schematics are supposed to look like.
Right, wow.
It reinforced my passion for it, definitely.
Oh, yeah. That's an interesting way to get into it. And like you said, I mean, you use the word reinforce, but yeah, that's a strong reinforcement. So anything so far in the past 5 years or so that kind of that helped you in any other aspects of your life?
With the project or from the project?
Yeah, or for me, for instance, once I became a mother and I started learning mother skills, it was interesting how I could take those into work.
Okay.
And vice versa. So, I mean, your story is rather remarkable at such a young age to go through that project. And I'm just wondering if it really opened up doors, not only academically, but maybe in ways, you got to, get exposure to the community and maybe take a leadership route also and build some leadership skills that you may not have even known that you were aware of, or anything that comes to mind?
Yeah. So during that whole experience of building and not knowing engineering, I fell in love with the learning process, and I became very aware of how it might be hard for other students that don't have these resources to learn about engineering. So then going into college and, being a student in the engineering department, I actually became very passionate about students themselves and the learning process. And I became a peer mentor for the MESA engineering program, to support students that are coming in being like, hey, I know it's hard being an engineer, especially a woman engineer, especially an engineer of color. Yes, I've become very aware of the need to support students that come from backgrounds like mine, to introduce them to engineering early on and show them that it's a possibility. And through that, that's where I found my passion for education. And I started thinking back like, wait, I think I've always wanted to be an educator. I just never was aware of that.
I was going to say, the first story that you told us, like teaching other students at a very young age, it sounds like it was kind of in there the whole time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's something that I think I've always had. I've always helped my peers in math and science. And then I think now I'm very, very certain that this is a path I want to do. And I know I could help a lot of students if I pursue it.
Awesome. Cool. So with all of that, I mean, it sounds so phenomenal. They didn't have those types of opportunities, certainly when I was growing up. So with not only with those opportunities, but like you said, with women, more women like you who are willing to mentor more other women or other students, what do you think the world is going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, maybe even 100 years, when we can have more opportunities like the ones that you've had?
Yeah, so we actually, some members from my team were invited by the Lemelson MIT Foundation to speak at a couple of their other student events, or also by the USPTO to speak at their invention education webinars. And I think through that and sharing our stories and our team stories, not only are we inspiring educators to provide these resources to be the mentors to these students, but also, having a role model for students that are coming from communities like us, to keep telling students that there's still things to invent out there. You still have a lot to learn and there's still a lot you can do. So hopefully through making more educators aware of invention education and getting them more comfortable and more access to that, we could have a lot more students just getting really creative in the classroom. I imagine like kind of this futuristic classroom where everyone's kind of like working on really big projects, and kind of doing their own thing. And you're like, whoa, okay, you go for it.
What's going on here? But go for it.
Yes.
Yeah. And, you told us a couple of things that happened throughout the project, but it's pretty normal to go through a process of inventing. Maybe the first time around you have an idea, but whenever you talk it out, it might not be such a great idea.
Yeah.
Whenever you think about the toenail cutter. But yeah, it's all a process. So it would be pretty cool to see classrooms like that. I agree.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there an inspirational quote or anything that you'd like to share with the audience?
There has been a quote that I've always kept in mind. Just, I don't know, being a curious learner, maybe feeling like I sometimes feel out of place. There's a quote by Einstein that goes, "A question that sometimes drives me hazy, am I or the others crazy?" I think that's just something to keep in mind also as an inventor. Is it that I'm thinking differently, or is everyone else not thinking like me? And I think that's just a very powerful thing to keep in mind as, being a woman in these fields and sometimes not being heard or being judged, for very radical reasons. It's just something to keep in mind, stay true to yourself.
True. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, Katia, I have some information in the show notes for people to get in contact with you if they wish. And certainly they are free to do that. Is there anything else you'd like to share with anyone to easily get in contact with you?
No, you could definitely follow me on LinkedIn. You could look me up as Katia Avila. And if any educator or student wants to learn more about invention education, I have some resources for you.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So thank you so much once again, Katia, for being on the show. And once again, I'll just include your contact information in the show notes. Coffee Time with Kauffman is the comfortable place to discuss women's leadership because I am on a mission to help the world discover the truth about what women are capable of. When you are ready for your leadership mastery makeover, go to mariakaufman.com and click on Consult a Coach, where you can schedule time with me for an empowerment session. Have a great week. Enjoy your adventures. Journey responsibly. And Katia, thank you so much for that very, very powerful story.
Thank you for listening.